live.
Hands up if you can hear me.
No, your audio is breaking up.
We don't have a very good internet connection here. We're quite a long way from the exchange. But could you use the landline?
Yep. Chair, you could dial in with the details from the meeting on the audio.
Try that now. Hold on. Doing that now.
Sorry, can I suggest to the committee that we either pause and let the chair try and reconnect, or that the current vice chair takes over, being Cllr Bolton, until the chair has a stable connection? Maybe the committee wish to wait for a couple of minutes just to see whether Mr. Angel can reconnect successfully.
I'm trying that now.
I'd personally rather wait because I don't have the briefing notes to chair the meeting.
Councillor Bolton, do you want me to just email those over to you now, just in case?
You can do, but then I'm not sure how I see everybody on the screen and then read notes.
Can the chair try speaking again to see if the connection's working?
Just take email. It's telling me the internet connection's unstable here.
Sorry, Chair, you're still breaking up. We can't understand what you're saying.
Mr. Angel, are you there?
Still here.
The chair needs to dial on the telephone, not use the audio connection on Zoom. He needs to dial in to get a decent audio connection.
Mr. Angel, can you disconnect completely and try dialing in by phone? Otherwise, I think the only option we have is to postpone the meeting and restart at 6:30, or postpone the meeting completely and reschedule.
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
No, Mr. Angel, you're not clear enough for us to be able to carry on with the meeting.
I have to ask Cllr Bolton to sound in temporarily. I'm trying to get a phone line.
Okay. Councillor Bolton, did you hear that? Mr. Angel did say he was happy if you were happy for you to take over the meeting.
Okay. I'm just trying to download the notes to my other computer.
Okay.
Could we reconvene in 5 minutes?
If other members of the committee are content to do that, I suggest we reconvene at 6:15. If anybody has any objections, please raise your hands. So we'll reconvene the meeting. We'll try reconvening at 6:15 then.
Yeah, still having to.
Thank you all.
I'm going. I'm trying to go email at the moment.
Can we still use the existing link, or do we need to be sent a new link and a new passcode? Or
We'll keep the existing meeting running. If for those who are active, if you can turn off your video and your mic, then come
Okay.
back online at 1:15.
Hello all. Just to say that Mr. Angel said he will try to make another attempt to log in. He did say if he can't log in, he was happy for Cllr Bolton to take over. Obviously, Cllr Bolton, if you're happy to do that.
So it's 18:15, everybody. Can I first check whether Mr. Angel has a connection and can hear us? Mr. Angel, are you there? Okay, as it's 18:15 then, Councillor Bolton as the Vice Chair, can we hand over to you?
You can. Should I introduce myself first?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Are we live, Matt? So over to you, Councillor Bolton.
Thank you, Mr. Ward. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this virtual meeting of the Audit Committee for Charlwood Borough Council. My name is Councillor Cllr Bolton and I'm the Vice Chair of the Audit Committee. Please note that this virtual meeting is being live streamed and recorded, and the recording will be made available on the Council's website following the meeting. Under the openness of local government bodies regulations, people may film or record this meeting, and this is outside the Council's control. However, people wishing to film or record the meeting should do so in a way that does not disrupt the business of the meeting. Also, so that the meeting is not disturbed, could I ask everyone present, please turn off your mobile phones or switch them to silent and ensure that your environment is distraction-free. In addition, please turn off or move smart speakers such as Alexa, Siri, Cortana, as these record conversations and this could be a breach of GDPR. As this is a virtual meeting, it will run slightly differently. Members will need to introduce themselves and state their name and confirm that they can hear and see the proceedings. This is important for the purposes of recording attendance and transparency of the meeting. I will do this by undertaking an alphabetical roll call. Members will use the raise hand feature in the participants section of the Zoom software if they wish to speak, and will be allowed to do so in a queue system. So now I will confirm those that are present at the meeting. I'll start with the councillors. Councillor Simon Bradshaw.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Councillor Simon Bradshaw, I can both see and hear the proceedings.
Councillor Charles.
Good evening. Thank you, Chair. Councillor Charles, I can confirm that I can both see and hear the proceedings. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Baldwin.
Thank you, Councillor Bolton. I can confirm that I can see and hear the meeting.
Councillor Parsons.
I can confirm I can see and hear proceedings and am present.
Thank you. And Councillor Taylor.
Good evening, all. Councillor Deborah Taylor, I can see and hear proceedings.
And Councillor Cllr Bolton, I can see and hear the proceedings as well. I'd now like to move on and ask each officer and other attendees to confirm verbally that they are present and that they can see and hear the proceedings. Victoria Gittings.
Through you, Chair, I don't believe that Victoria has been able to join this meeting at present.
Okay, thank you. Adrian Ward.
Thank you. I can see and hear proceedings.
Okay, thank you. Matt Goodger.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I can both see and hear the proceedings.
Lesley Tansey. Lesley Tansey? No, okay. Simon Jackson.
Thank you, Chair. I can see and hear proceedings.
Thank you. Lisa Maron.
Thank you, Chair. I can see and hear proceedings.
Tracy Hayes.
Thank you, Chair. I can hear and see proceedings.
Kerry Beavis.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I can see and hear proceedings.
Maria French.
Through you, Chair, Maria has not been required for this meeting today.
Okay, thank you. Nikki Conway.
Thank you, Chair. I can confirm I can both see and hear the proceedings.
Thank you. And Nadia Ansari.
Thank you, Chair. I can confirm that I can see and hear the proceedings.
Before we move on, am I correct in thinking that the Chair, Mr. Angel, has now joined us?
Yes,
No.
Chair. Yes, Chair, that is correct.
So I can hand over then to Mr. Angel, I think.
Hello?
No.
Mr. Angel, unfortunately, your connection is still very bad, and we are still experiencing some difficulties in hearing you clearly.
You're on mute. I'm trying something else at the moment.
Through you, Chair, and through you, Councillor Bolton, I think it might be better if Councillor Bolton, you were able to carry on the rest of the meeting if you were happy to.
I'm happy to do that, yes.
Okay, so
shall I continue?
Yes, please, if you would, Councillor Bolton. Thank you very much.
The first item that we need to deal with is the election of a vice chair for this committee for 2020-2021. I have to express an interest here because I'm currently vice chair, and I would put my name forward to continue in that role. But clearly, if there are any other nominations, then we will take a vote. Does anybody else wish to put themselves forward? Okay.
Chair, Vice Chair, sorry, you will need a seconder for yourself.
Sure.
Moving to a vote on that appointment.
I'm happy to second.
Thank you, Councillor Baldwin. So I'll do a roll call then to make sure that everybody's happy with that. So if I can start off with Councillor Bradshaw.
Yes, thank you. I'm happy to accept that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Charles?
Yes, Chair, happy to support you with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Parsons? Councillor Parsons, you need to unmute.
Yes, happy to support.
Thank you. And Councillor Taylor?
Happy to support.
Thank you. So if I could ask Democratic Services, we've had that election, and I guess that I, as Councillor Bolton, have been nominated to be Vice Chair or have been voted on to be Vice Chair. Is that correct?
Yes, Councillor Bolton, I can confirm that the vote was unanimous and that you have been duly elected as the Vice Chair for the Audit Committee for 2020-2021. Councillor Bolton, if I can just quickly add in that we do need to just add that an additional officer is in attendance at the meeting tonight, Justin Henry, who is our new Strategic Director for Commercialisation.
Justin Henry, can you confirm that you can hear and see the proceedings, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I can both see and hear proceedings.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda are apologies. I understand that no apologies have been received. That's correct?
Yes, Chair, I can confirm no apologies have been received for this meeting.
Thank you. Then we move on to minutes of the previous meeting, which was held on the 6th of June this year. And again, I will go and do a roll call and make sure that I'm happy with those minutes. So if you can confirm that you're content to receive and note the minutes. Councillor Bradshaw?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'm happy to content to receive the minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Charles.
Thank you, Chair. Happy to receive the minutes.
Councillor Bolton.
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to receive the minutes.
Thank you. Councillor Parsons.
Receive the minutes, Chair.
Thank you. And Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Chair. I wasn't on the committee at that point, so I can't really confirm or vote for it. So I'll just abstain from that. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. And I, Councillor Bolton, confirm that I'm happy to receive and note the minutes. So I think, with the exception of Councillor Taylor, who wasn't at the last meeting, we've unanimously approved the minutes. Yes?
Yes, thank you, Councillor Bolton. I can confirm that those minutes have been approved for that meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. The next item is disclosures of pecuniary and personal interests. I don't believe we've received any of those in advance of the meeting. Does anybody have anything to declare in terms of pecuniary or personal interests? No. Thank you. Item 5, questions under other committee procedures 12.8. I understand that no questions were submitted.
Yes, yes, Councillor Bolton, I can confirm no questions have been submitted for this meeting.
Okay. The next item on our agenda was external audit progress report, but I think we've just said that Victoria Gittings from Mazars is not able to attend the meeting.
Yes, Chair. Unfortunately, we do not have a representative from Mazars with us this evening. The committee did receive the external progress report prior to this meeting. So the committee obviously will have an opportunity following this meeting to have a look through the report. And then if they have any questions, I suggest they're able to put those to Victoria via email. Thank you.
Thank you. Next item, capital strategy update. I would like to ask Simon Jackson or Lesley Tansey to introduce the report, please.
Thank you, Chair. It's Simon Jackson here, if I may introduce this topic. It's obviously a certain amount of interest. If I just maybe run through some of the key points. So the first thing to say really is this is slightly out of our normal cycle of approvals for this report. So strictly speaking, it should come to the audit committee prior to going to council in February to be approved before the new financial year. So this particular strategy, though, because of the various reasons, but there was a delay in the timing of the audit committee, which then meant that it was meant to be approved at the April council meeting, and then due obviously to COVID, there's not been an appropriate council meeting since that date. So hence we've taken the opportunity to refresh the version that actually came to audit committee back in March, which seems like a very long time ago, with a view to the audit committee having another look at this before it goes to cabinet and council. The audit committee have the opportunity obviously to comment on this, and any comments on feedback from this meeting, I've left a place marker in the draft cabinet report, so we'll be looking to, or I would be looking to include that feedback potentially in the cabinet report, or if necessary, the committee can offer a separate report to cabinet and council to reflect their feedback. So that's just something on timing. There's quite a lot of technical detail in here and within the paperwork as a whole, and hopefully Nasmin's session will have, the training session immediately prior to this meeting will have hopefully helped with some of the understanding and maybe some of the key points around this. I think I'll just major on what I think are the key points of this. So first thing I maybe talk about is the environmental services fleet. So to some extent, some of these points are reflected also in the capital plan. So as and when the reports are published for Cabinet, there may be an opportunity to read the capital plan as well and see how these things dovetail together. In terms of the environmental services fleet, you may recall that it was agreed that although the environmental services contract was outsourced, that it was financially advantageous for the council to actually finance the fleet, and that created an overall saving in that arrangement. Having agreed that, the financing of the fleet was discussed in that paper, where it was suggested a 50-50 split between internal and external borrowing was appropriate. We probably should not have been quite so specific in those recommendations, and there was a subsequent report which suggested that we would look at the most financially advantageous way of financing the refuse collection, the environmental services fleet. So that's what we've done, and given the impact of COVID and the impact of minimum revenue provision charges that would apply to the fleet, what we've done is we've looked at the capital plan and withdrawn or deferred some of the schemes within that. And I appreciate that's not a paper that you have in front of you as a committee, but by doing that, we've been able to fund half of the fleet cost using our reserves. And as a result of that, we've been able to avoid the MRP charge going forward. But that's that half of the fleet financing requirement is reflected in this capital strategy. So that's maybe something that's been firmed up since the previous iteration of the capital strategy that you saw back in March. The other key things probably are a large increase in borrowing overall that is proposed within this version of the capital strategy. Maybe the key thing to iterate is a lot of it is opportunistic, and the idea of the strategies is it allows us to take advantage of opportunities around commercial property, regeneration of the town deal, and forward funding for the enterprise zone. So maybe if I touch on each of those. Commercial property, which I'll come back to, but in broad terms, we expressed in the previous iteration of this strategy that we were looking to build up a commercial property portfolio, taking account of proportionality that Nazmi mentioned in the training of in the order of 20 to 25 million. And we're looking to do that. Nazmin also spoke about and mentioned the fact that the rules around access to finance may change. So what this strategy proposes is that we bring forward that borrowing, or we reprofile it, so the whole of the 25 million is going to be available in this financial year. And I will stress that allows us to invest in commercial property, but doesn't mean that we will do. And I think when I've completed my introduction and maybe take some questions, I will ask Justin Henry, our new strategic director of commercial development, to talk about that particular process. So there's commercial property. We've also got the town deal. So this is enables for Loughborough, enables us to access up to £25 million worth of government funding to enhance the Loughborough town centre. So that's obviously very positive. What we've done is create a pot of £50 million to enable us to support that or the wider regeneration agenda. So within the town deal, it may be, and again, I don't know, but it may be that there is a requirement to match fund some opportunities that seem very positive, or recognising maybe where we are and the increased need to support our town centre and obviously across the wider borough as well. We've put some funding in place that enables us to do that. So again, that is money that would only be drawn down. So it is money that we would borrow, rather like the commercial property. So it is money we would borrow, but we would only do so on the basis that there were suitable opportunities to spend it on. So it's not we would not be borrowing that money as a matter of course. And then the third leg of this is forward funding of investment in the enterprise zone. There is a cabinet paper that is due on this, so the sort of the first opportunity in this area of a relatively small amount, probably about £2.5 million, but that is coming forward in October to have a look at. But the principle here is the enterprise zone. In the enterprise zone, all business rates are retained locally, and there is an arrangement that we signed. I believe it was an exempt cabinet paper from probably 2 or 3 months ago, where we actually finally agreed the detailed distribution of business rates between ourselves and the LEP and the county and the combined fire authority. But the way this would work is that we would invest in the enterprise. We would take out a loan to give to the local enterprise partnership, who would then provide a grant to the site sponsors, which would either be, in our case, Loughborough University or Charnwood Campus, and they would then invest in the infrastructure of their site. And from the business rates that would result from that, we will then have the loan repaid. And the way the mechanism would work is that rather than us paying 85% of business rates over to the LEP, we would withhold an amount that we would need to manage our interest payments and also any capital repayments as well. So that's how that would work. So again, the timing of that depends on what comes forward from the site sponsors and what comes forward from the LEP. But it is an opportunity for us to help develop help in the sort of economic regeneration and development of the borough. So, and obviously the enterprise zone is a key flagship for us in that regard. So we'd certainly want to be doing that. So some of those are reflected in other cabinet reports and maybe not. I'm happy to take questions, but they're discussed in more detail in other areas. But it did feel it was important to talk about those. As I say, anything that they're all opportunistic. So the fact that we have put in the capital strategy, the fact that we're planning to borrow, it's actually a place marker which gives us the opportunity to borrow and puts that authorisation in place. But all of those things have other governance structures around them. So it's not a question of us. It's not a question of agreeing the capital strategy and those amounts, and then we can do what we like with it. There are other governance structures in place. So in certainly the enterprise zone and other regeneration opportunities, if those come to pass, then you can expect to see a cabinet report on those items. Again, commercial property is slightly different due to the pace. We would have to look at it, but again, I've got Justin here maybe to talk about that if you've got any particular questions. One thing, just if I reflect back on the training and sort of a personal view as well to some extent, one reason why we didn't do commercial property or haven't done this previously, I think, is certainly from my own view, we didn't necessarily have the skills in-house and have someone who knew what they were doing in this potentially tricky area. But that's precisely why Justin has been brought in, because Justin has a track record of this and does know what he's doing, quite frankly. And Nasmin raised a number of questions around what do we do about due diligence, exit strategies, risk management, a number of areas like that. So I did think, given that the capital strategy was on the table tonight and that commercial property would potentially be a matter of interest, I thought it would be helpful to have Justin here to be able to add comment and maybe field some questions that you may have. So hopefully that makes some sort of sense. I don't know whether I've maybe allow Justin to speak, and then no doubt you'll have 1 or 2 questions around this topic. So if I ask Justin to speak, and then if there's any questions after that between Justin and myself, and Lesley will be happy to take them.
Chair, by your leave, if I may invite members of the audit committee to go ahead and pose their questions now. I can make a note of it and try to address all of them in the same instance, if that's okay.
Thank you. Could I ask members of the committee to use the raised hand function on Zoom, and we'll take the questions in the order that they come up. The first person I have is Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple for me. There's quite a few bits and pieces that Simon just talked about there and mentioned borrowing. Where's the plan for where that borrowing would come from within this strategy, or is that something that would then come later if that was considered?
Hi, Councillor Taylor. Through you, Chair, if I may try and answer that one. The borrowing would probably come from the Public Works Loan Board as a sort of general rule, given the amounts that we're talking about here. There is a possibility of using internal borrowing, which has been covered in her training, so that would have a lower interest rate, and essentially that's using the cash balances that we have on hand, and we can use that to finance investments up and until the point in time where that money became due. So it's essentially a lot of the money we hold is a lot of it belongs to other people. So things like council tax, and some of it is sort of our money, which is committed to things like the capital plan, but as yet unspent. So the reality of it is certainly relatively small investments, 1, 2, 3 million, we would possibly look to finance through internal borrowing. Larger amounts we would probably look to borrow externally. We do currently have access to the Public Works Loan Board, where rates are generally cheap, but there are other opportunities as well. So there are commercial organisations who would loan to us, and a possible other method is intra-local authority borrowing. So we actually, as part of our investment portfolio, lend to other local authorities, but there's no reason why that process couldn't be reversed.
Chair, can I just ask one final question on this about the borrowing for commercial property? Obviously, that there is issues with going forward that we might not be allowed to borrow to buy commercial property. So where would that funding come from if we had borrowing for commercial properties? Where would we look to borrow for that?
That would be a difficult one, but essentially, if the prudential code changes, and there's a consultation out, but if the prudential code changes, and also it's a slightly the legislation slightly, I wouldn't say confused, but maybe not obvious, in that that we are required to have regard to the prudential code within the statutory instruments. So it's likely that will be strengthened, that we are required to not have regard but required to follow. And then, so based on that, plus change to the code, that may prevent us borrowing to finance commercial property in the future. If we're not allowed to do that and the regulations prevent that, then we simply won't. We would be highly unlikely that we would do it. The only way we would be able to do it is if we had sufficient in-house resources. But that would, not only can you not, or the consultation suggests not only would you not be able to borrow to finance commercial property, you would not be able to borrow, you would not be able to have an arrangement where you would finance other investments or other parts of your capital plan using borrowing, and just say, I'm using the internal resources for commercial property. So essentially, it's quite likely that we just wouldn't be able to do it. Having said that, we just obviously we haven't got the final version of the consultation or the regulation, so we're still awaiting that.
Thank you. The next person we have is Councillor Parsons, please.
Thank you. As you might imagine, Chair and Mr. Jackson, I have a number of questions and issues which I hope Chair will allow me to run through, because the two, there's the capital strategy and the treasury strategy, there are interlinking questions or points of reference between them that I'd like to clarify. I just want to set the scene by saying that we all understand we're in a much higher risk environment now with COVID. In June, in the minutes, we commented that including the 5 million for commercial and property investment, it was acknowledged that any investments made now would be more difficult to manage, so the recovery report would consider the challenges faced. We still have that recovery report still to come later down the line, I think. And we've obviously got the SIPFA work going on about commercial property, particularly in investments. So I just sense in a background of significantly increasing risk, we are going to borrow more, and I'm in favour of commercialisation. I'm in favour of doing things to generate revenue. But I sense we're also going into a situation where we're significantly limiting the amount of scrutiny. In terms of annually with commercial property, we've created a single point of failure in the system, and that's not to the detriment of the individual who holds the position, but the chair of Scrutiny Commission is now the only person who will see any property details. We'll only get them annually, and the chair of Scrutiny Commission is meant to understand all of the MRP, yield implications, what the nature of that property is, its depreciation aspects, all of that the rest of the councillors don't see, and we get one shot a year at it. So in an environment of increasing risk, recognise the need for speed, don't have an issue with that. I sense an entire atmosphere of decreasing transparency, decreasing accountability, and less individuals able to contribute to the debate, because annually it's too late. It's all done and dusted. So that's just a background and contextual environment I feel we're entering into. And this committee's job is to understand and comment and talk about risk. So I see a higher risk environment with less opportunities to scrutinise and a single point of failure at Scrutiny Commission on commercial property that we as councillors have created, which I voiced my displeasure at the time and am extraordinarily uncomfortable with. To come down to some of the specifics of the report, I'm just going to go through in page order because that's the easiest and only way I can do this, if you'll forgive me, Chair. On page 28, 3.6.2, it notes that we are noting tonight an amendment to increase the maximum maturity period for local authority investments from 24 to 60 months. But I notice in the Treasury strategy on page 73, 3 local authority investments are already referenced as 5 years long. I just need to understand, is that they're already 5 years long and maturing on dates which seem to me to already passed in some cases? Or is this a preempter of us making the decision tonight to allow 5-year investments? Because my recollection is we've only gone as far as 2 years thus far.
Would Simon or Lesley like to respond to that, please? Simon, you need to unmute. You need to unmute.
Yes, apologies, Chair. I'm just trying to find the...
Page 73 is the table of current investments.
Yes, I've got this.
Page 28 says that we're amending and noting tonight the increase from 24 to 60 months. But we seem to have already got 3 local authority investments already in place at 60 months maturity dates. Or have they matured already? Are they already 5 years old? I don't understand, because I thought we quite firmly were stuck at 2 years at the moment.
I confess I don't know that. I don't know if Lesley knows the detail. It may be that we don't particularly know the details of that particular.
If I can just, can you hear?
Yes, I can, Lesley. Thank you.
Chair. Okay, thank you. The local government investments all were for a 2-year period when they were taken out. So I just need to look into the 3.62 and the Treasury Management page 73 just to make sure that they are tying up in terms of...
They don't tie up at the moment. I mean, one of them looks like it should have matured already on the 1st of April 2020, so shouldn't be here as a current investment. And all 3 of the local authority investments are labelled as 5 years, when we're only noting tonight a paper that still has to go to Cabinet to extend the maturity period from 2 to 5 years. So I don't really understand that. That doesn't ring true with me.
I'll certainly have to look into it for you, Chair.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Parsons.
If I move over onto page 31, again, it really relates back to my opening comments around how much we are expecting. And as I say, I make the point again for all councillors, to no detriment of the Chair of Scrutiny Commission. It's a job that goes with the title. So I don't have an issue with the Chair of Scrutiny Commission. I'm just very concerned when I look at the strategy investment in commercial property box. Our Chair of Scrutiny Commission needs to understand all of that carte blanche and needs all of that information presented to them in each commercial paper. In cases where the 3.5 minimum yield will not be met, this should be understood and recorded in delegated decision to purchase, providing a clear rationale and justification. I believe the first property just went through a few weeks ago because I saw that had no description of a property, no price, no yield, no MRP. So the first one I presume is done. And I'm presuming when we see that, I don't know, maybe I've got the wrong property then. Simon's nodding his head. But I'm very nervous that the Chair of Scrutiny Commission has to have all of this at her disposal and be presented with all of this, and is a single point of failure in the system. No one else will see this until it's all done and dusted. And I'm highly concerned about that, voiced my concerns at the time. Very uncomfortable. In an increasing risk environment, to leave all that pressure on one person seems quite wrong to me. Moving on through the pages.
Sorry, Chair, could I interrupt to clarify a governance issue? The Chair of Scrutiny is not the decision maker for any of these commercial property transactions that may take place. That will be the leader and the deputy leader. So there are at least 2 councillors involved in all of these decisions, and they will be reported to each subsequent council meeting. So there may be an annual yearly report, but each individual transaction, should any occur, will be reported to the next available council meeting. So all councillors will have a chance to see the documentation.
It's a great deal of pressure on the Chair of Scrutiny Commission. It's a great deal of pressure on the Chair of Scrutiny Commission for such big decisions to be the only person that scrutinises it before it goes. That's all I'm saying.
Chair, and again, a procedural issue, the Chair of Scrutiny is not scrutinising these decisions. The Chair of Scrutiny is giving approval for them to be exempted from calling due to urgency, Chair.
Okay, I'll take that point. Yeah, you're right. My apologies on that second point. Yep, happy to concede that. Okay, moving on. On page 33, it says in the strategy for investment in a property development company, it comments that at minimum, dividends and management fees will cover all of the council's borrowing costs in cases where the subsidiary company is wholly owned by the council. I'm slightly unclear as to our strategy going forward. Is our intention to have a wholly owned property company, in which case we should have some time limits in there over which those returns should come back to the council? Or is our intention going forward still not clear, and we may have a partnership, or we may be an equity shareholder and someone else in there? And then presumably that dividend return and the length of time that we would want to see the council's borrowing costs and fees covered would be agreed in that deal.
Just on, so there's, we didn't answer your previous question, Councillor Parson. So I think maybe the commercial property ones and the process ones, I think maybe Justin will maybe pick up at the end to run through it. On the investment in commercial property, you're correct, really. So what we haven't actually got any specific plans at the moment. So what this says is the sort of this sort of sets out the sort of principles which we would be looking to work through. But there are no specific plans. So if we are going to set up a property development company along these lines, what you would expect to see, I think, is a report to Cabinet. And because we've actually got no funding within the capital plan to do this, there would also need to be a report to Council. So this sort of sets out the idea about what we might do. But I think we haven't got any specific proposals on the table yet. So as and when those occur, then we would expect to see those through Cabinet and Council. Obviously, we're due to have another reiteration of the capital strategy for next springtime, and if we've got more detail at that point in time, we'll add it in. Or conversely, we may conclude that the property development company is maybe further away and further off the agenda than it is at the moment, and we may eliminate that. But if we are going to do anything, it will come through a cabinet and council route.
Thank you. Justin Henry, I think you wanted to say something.
Yes, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Parsons, just for your own satisfaction, there will be levels of governance and approvals as well as business case development that would need to be exacted with any of these elements that are within the capital plan or the capital strategy for that matter. There is a further governance and approval making processes required. So this is a case of saying we are earmarking some funds for future spend, potentially, provided that all of the requirements are actually satisfied in their execution. So certainly it's not a kind of a de facto decision-making process from that perspective.
Moving on just through the reports on page 43. Are we standing, and I mean this quite genuinely, are we standing by the figures in column 2, 2021 revised estimate, that we are April, May, June, July, August, September. We are almost 6 months into the year, and we are going to have a revenue contribution from our capital investment, which hasn't started, of £8.2 million.
Who would like to take that? Simon, unmute.
Apologies, I'm the way I'm working here. Apologies, the way I'm working here is on my. I'm looking at the actual reports on my.
We've got the page number issue again.
I've got. I'm afraid so. Yes. So this is in the Treasury Management bit.
It's page 6 of the Treasury Management report, if that's helpful.
Yeah, I'll just.
Page 43 on our paper report.
Yeah. No. Sorry. Oh, it's on your right. Sorry. Yes, I've got the. I'm just looking at the online one. So it's a table on.
Page 43, page 6. It says here that we are going to generate revenue contribution of 8.2 million from our capital.
Right.
Presumably this year. We are 6 months into the year. Presumably we haven't spent any of that capital yet, and we're going to have a 2.5 times increase in revenue.
Yeah, sorry. Revenue contributions in this case doesn't mean that's the amount of money that's going to come off. That means that's the funding from our reserves. So it basically means that that means that we're going to finance it from ongoing revenue that comes in. And basically that refers to the housing revenue account, where naturally there is money coming from the rents that does enable to finance the capital programme within the HRA. So it's monies that we get in. It's basically day-to-day monies that we get in. We're able to use to fund our capital programme.
Why the significant increase then if it's HRA revenue money on last year on this? That doesn't make sense to me either.
I think the reason for the increase is because in 1920, which to be honest, Councillor Parsons, you're probably aware of, sometimes we don't necessarily spend as much on the capital programme as we plan. So I think the 1920 figures are obviously actual. So I think if you were to go back and have a look at it, and I couldn't guarantee this, I suspect we plan to spend
carryover.
It's planned to spend nearly the 8 million, but that basically is what those revenue contributions is an HRA amount. Yeah.
Okay, that makes a lot more sense than it being revenue generated.
Yeah, it's not.
That's fine. That makes a lot more sense.
The MTFS would look a lot different if I thought we were going to get £8 million coming in next year. Yeah.
Okay. I'm just working through. I don't think there's much more. Can you just clarify for me, just for my own, I'm pretty sure I think I know the answer, but with regard to the HRA account, we're not going to subsidise repayment of the HRA loan with income from the general fund. It's all within the HRA envelope. The repayment profile that I saw last year for the HRA account over the next whatever it is, 10 years, 30 years, whatever it is, that profile I saw, none of that's coming from the general fund. That's all going to be done within the envelope of the HRA funding at the moment.
Absolutely correct.
Okay. On the page previous to that, on page 52, page 15, I may have an answer to this, but it's not very clear from the way the bullet points. The second bullet point, 2/3 of the way down the page, talking about the borrowing strategy. It's the comment, it mitigates the risk associated with investing cash. What double-edged sword about what risk of investing cash is relative to risk of borrowing. I didn't really understand why that was quite in that phraseology, because I would probably, if I had cash in the bank, the risk of investing cash seems less to me than the risk of borrowing right now. Or I didn't really quite understand just why it was worded in that way.
Yeah, I think what that's trying to get at is, I suppose the risks around cash are that we may need it for something else. So I suppose it's around. I guess it's around keeping that cash in reserve.
I'm no offence to whoever wrote it. It just seems clumsy to me because I feel more risk with borrowing than I do with using cash at the moment.
Yeah. No, that's. I think I think it's obviously quite complicated. So maybe we'll make a note of that one, and when we get to the next iteration of this, hopefully we can make that a little bit clearer. But yeah, take that.
My last point, which is a more general point, is where we've got the gaps in the following will be updated for the final version of the Cabinet report statements.
Yes.
Are we going to see those and pass them before they go into the Cabinet report? Because someone's got to write what's going in there, and I would want to be part of the group that agreed that dropped in case, because I don't know what you're going to put there, what somebody's going to put there. So I'm saying it's okay, but you could write something that I completely disagree with that I won't have had an opportunity to comment on.
Okay, all those the timing of this is a draft document. All we're saying there is, to be honest, it's stuff we get from our our Treasury advisors. So they advise on things like likely investment returns and interest rates coming forward. So all we're saying here is this document was we obviously used the March version as the basis of this. So some of the things and figures probably just need updating with the latest view of interest rates, etc. So I don't think you could expect to see anything differently. It just maybe returns are sort of a few basis points different to what we what's recorded in here. So it's just actually an internal note for me and Lesley that when we come up with the final version, we just need to make sure that we've got the most up-to-date return. So we're not actually going to say anything differently. It's just maybe where we're going to quote a rate. Those, we want to quote a rate from September rather than a rate from back in March. I don't think in practice they probably have changed very, very little. It's just a placeholder note for us. That's all that is.
Sorry, Chair, this is absolutely the last one, Chair. On the investment in a property development box, I am jumping back to page 33 because it was the last point I just wanted to raise, and I raised it in the pre-call, in the training call as well. We've got that bullet point that says MRP can be avoided or mitigated through the loan structure. But I'm unsure when I read what we're sort of planning at this point with just what I see in front of me about, I don't sense a capital receipt at the end of this. I sense that the property development company is an ongoing. I'm not sure about whether there's a capital receipt at the end of that. So of which that it was made clear in the training that if there's a capital receipt, that will negate MRP. But the structure we've got, that it's indicating we're going to be an equity investor. So it means we're not going to own it wholly.
Yeah.
I quite like MRP. MRP gives me a bit of reassurance that we're funding and budgeting slightly more than we need to get back to make sure we can pay back our debt. So I quite like MRP as a concept, and I'm not keen to be avoiding it if I think we can build it in, because I'd rather make 3.5% and then we've got 1.5% to pay back our debts than make 2% and hope for a capital receipt or an ongoing dividend or whatever we might be hoping for. And I that whole property piece to me needs, I know we're developing it and it's ongoing, but for me to, the board to be comfortably reassured where we're going in that direction, and I am in favour of it, I make that point. I want to know more certainly where we're heading by way of end game, receipt, long-term view of how that's going to be done. Because if there's any doubt about that, I want an MRP in the return. I want a return on any money we put in to make sure we're going to pay that money back. Long council, not just sit and hope for a big capital receipt at some point that we haven't quite articulated because we didn't quite know that was our plan. I want to see more clarity in what that plan looks like over the longer term for investment.
Yes. So, sorry, just to clarify, that was sorry, your question's in relation to a property development company.
It's the box on page 33. It's strategy for 2021, investment in a property development company.
Yes. So
our own property development company, and we kind of intimate that we're feeling quite clever with ourselves because we're avoiding MRP by creating a particular type of loan structure. And I quite like MRP as a safety point for us from a risk and audit perspective.
Yeah, I mean, the answer there is, and again, this would come forward in the detail of what we're proposing. So what would be possible or prudent in terms of an MRP policy in respect to the property development company is a matter of taste, which we can't necessarily answer until we've got the detail. But there are ways of structuring such things such that MRP is not deemed necessary, or you can consider it not necessary, and that would be potentially maybe the basis of how the loan was structured. So if you're borrowing on a term loan basis, where I borrow, me not necessarily personally, but if we as a council were to borrow £10 million, just pay the interest ticket with a view that the £10 million is going to come back in as a lump sum at the end of the term, then that's where an MRP type arrangement is appropriate. If we had some arrangement whereby we invested in a property development company and the way the funds were flowing back to the loan were maybe via on a repayment basis, then if it's on a repayment basis, MRP is not really required, because essentially you're paying down the capital on a periodic basis with so you're paying back the capital as part of the loan repayments. And again, it may well be when the enterprise zone paper comes forward in October, it's highly likely that will be on a repayment basis. And given it's a repayment basis, we wouldn't be requiring an MRP charge in line with that. If it's a term loan, though, that would be different. So it really is a question of how the loan is structured, and then how the loan is structured, and obviously how the loan structure is going to be based on the sort of underlying cash flows you might expect from the development. So I have to say,
I know that it needs clarity. It's just the line that says at minimum dividends and management fees will cover all the council's borrowing costs.
Yeah,
doesn't necessarily provide me with comfort that it's going to repay the capital.
Well, okay.
So it's just it's not clear. We're not clear yet, and I understand that. I'm flagging it as something we want to see. I would want to see from a risk perspective that loop closed off.
I think that's fair comment. I think, to be honest, though, I will sort of go back to my previous comment that any details of any property development company that we would have will come through Cabinet and Council, and you could quite reasonably expect how it's structured, the MRP policy in for that, and how it's all going to work. You could reasonably expect to see that in those papers as and when they're likely to appear. I have to say, at the moment, I don't envisage anything of that nature in the coming months, but it's in the capital strategy with just basically as a place marker indicating that it is something we may wish to do in the future.
Thank you very much, Chair. Apologies, but thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I can't see any other hands up on this item, so no further questions. Okay. We now need to agree the recommendations, and if Nadia or Nikki can correct me, please, if I get this wrong. The recommendation on page 11 of the papers is that the committee considers the proposed capital strategy, including the Treasury Management Strategy for 2020-2021, as attached in the draft Cabinet report dated 15th of October, to determine whether there are any issues it wishes to draw to the attention of Cabinet at that meeting or at full council when they consider the relevant recommendations from Cabinet. And the relevant recommendations from Cabinet are on page 14. That the capital strategy be approved and recommended to council, that the Treasury Management Strategy Statement, annual investment strategy and minimum revenue provision policy be approved and recommended to council, and that the prudential and treasury indicators also set out within this report be approved and recommended. So can I do a roll call, please? To ask whether you're happy to accept these recommendations.
Sorry, sorry, Councillor Bolton. Sure. Sorry, just bear with me. Officer Justin Henry just asked if you wanted him to answer any of those questions that were raised earlier. I believe Justin Henry was going to answer some of the questions that had been asked by a couple of the committee members.
Does anybody need a question answering by Justin? Or have you got the information that you required? No.
Okay.
But no hands up.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Justin. That's fine. Sorry, Chair. Sorry to interrupt again. My understanding is that there is an opportunity for the committee to add some comments into this report. So I was just looking to Adrian or Simon just to provide a little bit of advice on that, please.
Chair, if the committee wishes to make any comments to put forward to Cabinet and or Council, somebody would have to propose the wording, it would have to be seconded, it then have to be agreed as the collective view of the committee. But obviously, if individual councillors have issues they wish to raise, there are constitutional processes to do that, either by putting questions to Cabinet or via scrutiny or speaking at the council meeting when it comes on the relevant date.
Thank you. So can we move on to the vote now? I'll do a roll call, go through you in turn, as to whether you are in agreement with the...
Chair,
sorry?
Chair, can I just check, you read out the recommendations on page 14. Can I just check what recommendations we're approving? Is it the ones on page 11 or page 14?
I was told that we were looking at both of them, which is why I read out both of them, Councillor Taylor. But I'm happy to be corrected.
So, Chair, through you, obviously, the Cabinet report that's going forward has those 3 recommendations. So tonight the committee have had the opportunity to have a look through that report to see if they do agree with those recommendations, but also, like Mr. Ward said, there is also an opportunity here for the committee, if they want to make any comments, you know, for those to be added into that report. So it's probably worth checking with the committee if there is if anyone wants to propose any wording to go into that report before we move towards a recommendation.
Or is that something that we could do outside the meeting, Nadia?
It is something that can be done outside the meeting, but I think we just need to make sure that the committee are happy that, you know, they want to take any actions outside of the meeting, and they don't want to have that opportunity to agree some formal wording to go into the report, which will be presented to Cabinet.
Okay.
So it might, if I can suggest a way forward, it might be. Yes, sorry. It might be worth asking each member perhaps what they wish to do, if they want to propose some wording or if they're happy to deal with their queries outside of the meeting.
Thank you, Nadia. So let me do a roll call on that first. Do you want to spend some time now proposing wording, or is this something you're happy to do outside the meeting? So, Councillor Bradshaw, do you want to do it now or after the meeting?
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to do either, but outside the meeting will be fine.
Thank you. Councillor Charles?
Happy to resolve this out of the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Baldwin?
I'm happy to deal with it outside of the meeting.
Thank you. Councillor Parsons?
Yes, Chair, I am happy to deal with it outside the meeting. I would wish to be involved in a narrative that goes with this. The problem with that is I want the committee to agree it. And it's now, within a few seconds of this all coming through tonight, is not the time for me to consider the verdict of a narrative about an increased risk environment, less scrutiny, specific issues, the reconciliation of page 73, Treasury investments with the observations of there's a piece of work needs doing. If we decide not to do that piece of work, then I'm going to abstain in the vote tonight. If we find a mechanism to do that work that the committee are happy with, then I'm happy to contribute to something going with this report. But it means someone's got to take responsibility for writing that and doing it.
Sorry, Chair, can I clarify? This evening is the committee's only opportunity to agree any collective views they wish to move forward to Cabinet, unless you wish to call an additional meeting of the committee to reconsider this item again before it goes forward to Cabinet.
So what are people's views? I'm sorry, let me just finish the roll call. Councillor Taylor, you hadn't said whether you wanted to do it now or outside the meeting.
Chair, I can't agree to anything that we haven't agreed as a committee going forward to Cabinet, so I can't agree to doing something outside of the meeting.
Okay, I would personally be happy to do it outside the meeting, but where does that leave us, Nadia?
Sorry, Chair, can I try and clarify? I think the suggestion to do things outside the meeting referred back to councillors' individual options in terms of the governance route, to either ask questions of Cabinet when it comes before Cabinet, to attend or participate in relevant scrutiny committee meetings, or to speak during the debate when it goes to full council. I don't think the committee can agree wording outside of the meeting, as Councillor Taylor has just said. That would have to be agreed at this meeting or at an additional meeting if the committee wished to call one. But any additional meeting would have to take place prior to the Cabinet date.
Just to confirm, the Cabinet agenda is going to be published on the 2nd of October.
I think, Chair, now is the opportunity for anybody who wants to propose any wording to go forward to Cabinet to be collectively agreed by the committee. I think this evening is the opportunity to do that. And obviously the papers have been out with over a week's notice, so people have had a chance to consider them, think about issues, raise questions. If their questions have not been satisfactorily answered, they presumably then have remaining concerns that they may wish to propose some wording for the committee to consider and then recommend on to Cabinet and Council.
So apologies all, but I'm not really sure what we do now, because we've had the councillor who's asked most of the questions on this issue this evening, who I believe stated that now was not an appropriate time to consider wording because we need to go away and think about it. But at the same time, we're being told that we can't really go away and think about it. So I'm a little bit uncertain as to how we move.
Chair, you can obviously, as councillors, go away and think about it. But if you wish to agree collective wording on behalf of the Audit Committee, that has to be done at a formal Audit Committee meeting. It can't be done outside the meeting. So it may be that a member or members of this committee wish to agree their own individual or collective views, but they won't be the formal views of the audit committee unless they are approved at an audit committee meeting.
Chair?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm happy to stop. I'll abstain in the vote, Chair, if it makes life easier, because, you know, I'll have to do my work elsewhere. I've been beat up more times than I care to imagine for trying to do something right. So I'm happy to abstain on the vote if it helps you progress, Chair.
Yeah. Well, I suppose in that case we could. Right. Who's this?
Sorry, I was just going to say through you, Chair, that the recommendation is asking you to determine whether there are any issues that you wish to draw to the attention of Cabinet. What you could decide now is that you all agree with the issues that Councillor Parsons has raised and that they are minuted in the meeting minutes, and it is that text that goes forward into the Cabinet report.
That seems an eminently reasonable way of progressing. So can I take a roll call on that? What Nikki has just suggested to us?
Chair, Chair, sorry to interrupt. Can I just clarify? I think that's a valid suggestion, but it will mean that you all agree that you share Councillor Parsons' concerns, just to make sure that all members of the committee are aware that that's what they will be voting on, that collectively you all have exactly the same concerns that Councillor Parsons does.
And that's not very fair on other. That's very difficult for other members. I'm acutely aware of that.
Through you, Chair, I believe Councillor Taylor has got something to add, so maybe we can just let her speak for a moment.
Sure.
Thank you, Chair. I've had all my questions answered, and looking at the papers, I don't have anything further that I wish to raise to the Cabinet, so I would propose that we accept the report as it is and support the report going to Cabinet. So that would be my proposal.
Does anybody second that? Do we have a seconder for Councillor Taylor's proposal?
Hi, Chair. I'm happy to second that. Thank you.
Okay. Well, then let's move and do the voting. So, Councillor Bradshaw, do you support the suggestion?
Councillor Taylor's suggestion, yes, I do. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Charles, yes.
Thank you, Chair. I'm in support of the proposal.
Councillor Baldwin.
I'm in support of the proposal.
Thank you. Councillor Taylor, clearly. Yeah. I'm sorry, did I miss you out, Councillor Parsons?
It wouldn't be the first time, Madam Chair. I'm quite used to it. I'll abstain on this vote, as I will on the next.
You'll abstain, you said?
I'll abstain, yeah, that's fine.
Okay. So what's the result of the vote, Nadia, please?
Chair, can you just indicate whether you were for, against, or abstaining from that vote, please, just so I can gather yours?
I'm actually abstaining.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So, in regards to the vote that the committee support the report and are happy for it to go to Cabinet, we have got 4 members of the committee were for the vote, 0 members of the committee were against it, and we've got 2 members of the committee abstained. At this point, Chair, would it be possible just to see if Mr. Angel, the chair of the committee, is available for the vote?
Does Mr. Angel vote on these things as an independent member?
Sorry, Chair, as the independent chair, Mr. Angel doesn't have a vote.
I was just about to say that, if anybody can hear me.
Yes, thank you. Sorry about that, Chair. Yes, so I can just confirm that the motion was carried, and so the minutes will state that the committee were for the report and were happy to recommend it to Cabinet.
Thank you. I'd like to suggest that as Mr. Angel is now with us, Would you like to take over chairing the meeting at this point? Unmute.
Can I be heard properly?
Yes.
Right, I'm on my wife's laptop now. So in that case, is that item dispensed with completely?
Yep.
Right, we'll move on. Well, first of all, can I thank Councillor Bolton for standing in for me? I've been watching all along, by the way, so I can see what's going on, taking part in the debate. We'll move on then to item 7, which is the internal audit report, which is Lisa's. Would you like to say some words and introduce it, Lisa?
Yes, I would. Thank you, Chair. I would like to run through and draw your attention to some of the key points in the report for the first quarter of 2021. So you'll see in paragraph 21, I've outlined some of the activity that internal audit have been undertaking. We've spent a lot of time on the business grant assurance work and seen some good outcomes from that work to date in terms of recovering erroneous or fraudulent payments. We've supported the work on the discretionary grant scheme, carrying out quite a lot of prepayment checks before those payments were made. We've concluded the 1920 audit plan. You'll have received recently the final versions of the strategic communications and debtors audits. And we've carried on working hard to align the shared services, a 3-partner shared service. Due to COVID-19 and the significant changes to ways of working and having to use our audit resources on supporting business grants and on other areas of work, we've had to revisit and revise the audit plan that was agreed originally in March. And I have to say this is in line with the approach that all local authority internal audit teams are taking. I've consulted with SLT and you'll see the revised plan included at Appendix A with the original Appendix B for comparison. You'll notice in the revised plan that much more time is due to be spent on the key financial systems. And some audits on the original plan have had to be removed in order to allow us to prioritise this work and the additional time that's required to be spent on those audits. I'm confident that the revised plan will give me sufficient coverage to enable me to give an annual audit opinion. Coming on to paragraph 2.3, you'll see that a number of reports were issued during the quarter relating to 1920. So you have the executive summaries and recommendations included at Appendix C. There are no areas of significant concern that I need to draw your attention to at this time, and there weren't any high priority recommendations that were issued in any of those reports. You'll pick up that I've been working with the ICT specialist auditors and the ICT manager to review the IT audit plan, and that's been really to try and make sure that it focuses on those new key risks in this new post-COVID world that we're operating on. And a big focus there you'll see is around managing the risks of remote working in an ICT environment. We've continued to follow up our internal audit recommendations. However, you'll note that some have not been progressed as we would have expected, and the full detail there is included at Appendix D, with the main reason being that the services and the critical business response and focus on COVID-19 in Q1. So in terms of internal audit performance in Appendix D, we've not yet completed any of the 2021 plan. That isn't a concern at this point because we have been working, we've realigned our focus. We've done a lot of work on the new risks around the business grants, and we've revised our plan going forwards. So I do expect that our work, our performance will improve as work goes on, as I can confirm that work has started on that 2021 plan, and there are audits from the 2021 2021 plan at Appendix A that are now in progress. I'm happy to take any questions that councillors might have on the report.
Do we have any questions?
I've got my hand up.
Councillor Bolton.
Thank you, Chair.
You're on mute.
No, I'm not.
Oh, sorry, I'm looking at the wrong one. Sorry. Whoops. Carry on.
I'm personally very concerned that we're months into the financial year and we haven't yet started the audit plan. And I've been on the audit committee now for 18 months, and not starting this year's audit plan comes on the back of not, having serious problems in previous years in completing the plan. So I just personally am very concerned about that.
Councillor Baldwin.
Thank you, Chair. I'm slightly concerned on page 23 about IT disaster recovery. And I can understand the need to prioritise in the current financial climate. But there's very little work that seems to be going on in terms of, it may be that we're very happy with our IT resilience and with business continuity and how it can be picked up, but there's not a lot going on there in terms of detail. Can you hear me?
Chair, would you like me to respond to the two comments?
Yes, please.
So if I can firstly pick up Councillor Bolton's point, I agree. I agree with your concerns about not starting the plan. However, due to all three partner councils invoking their critical response to the pandemic, it was agreed by all of the CLTs, senior leadership teams, and by North West as lead partner, that our audit work would be temporarily suspended in order to support the councils in their critical response, not put any additional pressure on services until an appropriate time, but also focus our audit resources where the biggest new risks were, which is why in Q1 we've spent such a lot of time on the business grants assurance work and supporting with the discretionary grants prepayment checks. As soon as it has been reasonably practicable, we have got agreement from CLTs at all of the authorities, CLTs and SLTs, that we would revisit the audit plans and that we would pick up and take those forward as soon as we could, and we have done that. And I would just reiterate the point that we are not unique. There are three of us as partners, but also all of the local authority forums that I participate on, through the Midlands Audit Group, through the Institute of Internal Audit. They have a local government audit forum. This is exactly the same position across all local authorities, where many audit teams have been redeployed to support that critical response, and they are only now being able to pick up and take forward their audit plans. Everyone has had to revise and revisit, and this is why you'll see the focus on the key financial systems for the rest of the year, because for me to be comfortable in order to give that opinion at the end of the year, I recognise that the ways of working have changed significantly. Most officers are working remotely, and so the key risks that we need to address and cover those key risk, key financial areas of risk, and get assurance that those controls that we would expect to see in the normal working environment have continued through the remote working environment. I don't know if you want to follow up question, or you're happy for me to move on to the next question.
Well, it's a statement rather than a question. I think I'd have far less concern if we hadn't already been way behind on the audit plan for the last financial year. And I know that that's history now and there isn't anything that we can do about it. But I just want to lodge my concern.
Yeah,
is all. Thank you.
And I suppose I would say at this point we're already in a stronger position than we have done previously, because we have now completed the 1920 plan way earlier. If you think about the previous year, that was carrying on for a long time. So now that is completed, and we are progressing the 2021 plan, and we'll continue to work on that. And we have support from SLT. And from the heads of service that we're working on ensuring that we deliver that plan this year. But I take your comment and note your concerns on that. Councillor Baldwin, would you mind just more specifically which so those are the recommendations in Appendix C that you're referring to.
Yeah.
So, sorry, could you just
Appendix D
repeat? Yeah, if you could repeat your query there.
It's just that all of the recommendations appear to not be progressed at the moment. Is that my understanding correct about that?
That's the advice that we've been given around business continuity specifically. We have looked at this briefly in the Outlook 365 and the remote working audit that's hasn't been reported to audit committee yet. So the final has now been issued in Q2, but that won't come back until later on, till the December committee. I didn't specifically follow up the recommendations here, but there were no concerns raised from that audit on the remote working and the Outlook 365. Sorry, Adrian, did you want to come in?
I just wanted to explain that I think if Councillor Bolton is referring to business continuity more generally, we've had the biggest live business continuity exercise in living memory in the last 6 months. The council is still here. We responded incredibly quickly in relation to getting several hundred staff set up and being able to work from home. We had to suspend some services for a while, particularly services where we would have been going into people's homes and that sort of thing. But generally speaking, in a pandemic situation where, you know, quite quickly we had to vacate the office premises totally and set up a completely new working pattern for the vast majority of our staff, involving IT, connections and home working infrastructure and all of that. We actually, I think, managed really, really well as an organisation. So I think in terms of general business continuity, we've been through it for real, and I think we've come out, touch wood, remarkably well so far. So hopefully that provides some clarification in terms of general business continuity.
Thank you, that's helpful, Adrian.
Thank you. Are there any further questions?
I think Councillor Taylor has her hand up, Chair.
I can't see the hand. Councillor Taylor.
Thank you. My question was just a general one about Appendix D. Obviously, there's quite a few recommendations that have not been implemented by their due date, and some of them are, well, there's one that's high, there's quite a few medium, but there's actually no date as to when they're going to be completed. I understand all the comments that have been made earlier about our continuity, but it would be helpful to know when those are going to be done and when they'll be reported back to us as being completed. Obviously, they're just going to drift otherwise if there's no end date.
Yeah. I'm not sure if you can hear me. Yeah, I agree with that, and that would be part of. So that follow up in Q1, to be honest, was quite light touch because of the pressures that the services were facing at that time. But when we do our continuing follow up, we will be more pressing as to say, you know, okay, when do you now envisage that will be practical, or do we need to revise, you know, have things changed actually, and that recommendation isn't relevant anymore, because that may be a possibility as well. So we haven't pressed people when we did those follow-ups at that time, but we will take that new approach going forwards, and we'll include that in that report back in December. Thank you.
Can I just ask one question, Lisa? Can you hear me? I can't hear you now.
Sorry, I put myself on mute so that you could speak, but yeah.
Just in point 2.3 on page 80, 4 of the audits that you carried out have all given us moderate assurance. Should we be concerned about that?
No, I think the key thing there is that members may recall from a discussion at the June Audit Committee, that moderate range is quite broad. And what you'll see, this is where it's important to then go in and look at the recommendations that were made. And none of those audits included any high priority recommendations. They were either a mix of medium and low or medium. So those audits would fall more on that positive assurance side, although that moderate range is quite broad. Hopefully going forwards, when we're issuing our reports and final opinions for 2021, we'll now be using the new 4-level assurance model, and it'll be easier for members of the audit committee to make that judgment themselves, as well as being guided by me. I will draw your attention to a negative assurance report, but those ones would have fallen into that reasonable category, which would be a positive rather than a negative assurance. So nothing to be concerned, no areas of significant concern on those reports.
Sorry, Chair, you're on mute.
Am I unmuted now? No, I'm back on mute.
You're muted now, Chair. You need to switch it off.
Right. Start again then. The recommendations in the report are that we note the progress as set out in Appendix A. Can I go through a roll call of members to see whether they're in favour or not? First of all, Cllr Bolton, are you in favour or not?
Well, I note the report subject to the concerns that I've expressed. Thank you.
Cllr Bradshaw?
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to note the report.
Cllr Charles?
Thank you, Chair. Happy to note the report.
Cllr Parsons?
Note the report.
Cllr Bolton?
I'm happy to note the report.
And Cllr Taylor?
Happy to note the report, Chair.
Then we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is allowances and expenses claimed by councillors and cooperative members for 2018-19. Is there anything you'd like to say on this, Adrian?
Not really, Chair. It's just an annual information item that comes before the committee.
Thank you. There's 2 recommendations if anybody doesn't have any questions at this stage. First one is the amounts claimed be noted. And the second recommendation, if there's any issues arising from this report, they need to be referred to the head of strategic support for further investigation. I take it that nobody's got any issues that they wish to refer for investigation. So I'll put it to the vote and take a roll call again. Councillor Bolton?
Happy to note the report.
Thank you. Councillor Bradshaw?
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to note the report.
Councillor Charles?
Thank you, Chair. Happy to note the report.
And Councillor Parsons?
To note.
Thank you. Councillor Baldwin?
I'm happy to note the report. Thank you, Chair.
And Councillor Taylor?
Happy to note the report, Chair.
And in that case, I'll move on to item 8 on the agenda, which is one of our favourite items, the annual update of the anti-fraud and corruption strategy and whistleblowing policy. Would you like to say anything on this, Adrian?
Thank you, Chair. I'll be very brief. We do review these documents every year. We're not proposing any changes to you. As I've noted within the report, we did have one instance of whistleblowing. That was a referral that was made directly to a relevant strategic director. The director alerted me for record keeping purposes, and the whistleblowing referral was investigated, and nothing more to add really, Chair.
Thank you. Do any members wish to ask any further questions of Adrian? No, then the recommendation on this report is we note the information on the operation of the anti-fraud and corruption strategy and whistleblowing policy. Can I take a roll call of members to vote? Councillor Bolton?
Happy to note the report.
Councillor Bradshaw?
Thank you, Chair. Happy to note the report.
Councillor Charles?
Thank you. Happy to note the report.
Councillor Parsons?
Happy to note.
And Councillor Baldwin?
I'm happy to note the report.
And Councillor Taylor?
Happy to note the report, Chair.
Right, item 10 is the risk management risk register update. Would you like to say anything on this, Adrian?
Thank you, Chair. So this is the regular update report the committee receives on risk management. You may remember from the last meeting, we did establish a specific COVID-19 related risk register. The only update since the last meeting has been the additional risk that's been added on to that COVID risk register, which from memory, I think relates to the increased risk of home working for our staff. So we've listed the mitigating actions we're taking relating to that risk. Thank you, Chair. Any questions? Obviously, I'll try and
I have a
answer.
question from Councillor Taylor. Councillor Taylor?
Thank you, Chair. Just about the appendix to the COVID risk register, it does say kept under constant review, but how often is it reviewed?
I think the answer to that is we have a weekly monitoring meeting of the relevant senior officers within the council who are dealing with the council's organisational and community response to COVID. And I think while we don't specifically go through the risk register at each of those meetings, if there are any new or emerging risks or issues that crop up, like the home working one, we do then take those forward and update the risk register. And it is due to be reviewed as a document itself at the next meeting of CLT, I think. So the answer is on an ongoing basis, Councillor Taylor, in reality.
Thank you. Any other questions? Can't see any other hands raised at the moment. No? Then the recommendation of the report is that the committee note it. I'll take a roll call of members to see whether we're in favour or not. Councillor Bolton?
Thank you, Chair. Happy to note the report.
Councillor Bradshaw?
Thank you, Chair. Happy to note.
And Councillor Charles?
Thank you, Chair. Happy to note the report.
Councillor Parsons?
Happy to note.
Councillor Baldwin?
I'm happy to note the report, Chair.
And finally, Councillor Taylor.
Happy to note, Chair.
Thank you. Let's see, where are we now? We're on item 11 then. Council's use of Regulatory and Investigatory Powers Act. This is another one of yours, isn't it, Adrian?
It is, thank you, Chair.
And I see it's a nil report.
I know this is the committee's favourite report, and you all wait with bated breath at each meeting for the report that will say we've actually used our RIPA powers, but sadly on this occasion it is a nil report, Chair, again.
All right. Can't remember when the last time we had a item to note.
It's been many, many years now, Chair.
Thank you. Right, and the recommendation is to note there's been no use of RIPA powers by the council during the period May to August 2020. So has anybody got any questions before I take a roll call? No? Right, Councillor Bolton.
Happy to note the report, Chair.
Councillor Bradshaw.
Thank you, Chair. Happy to note.
Councillor Charles.
Thank you. Happy to note.
Councillor Parsons.
Happy to note.
Councillor Baldwin.
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to report to note the report.
And Councillor Taylor.
Happy to note the report, Chair.
Yep. And I think we're on the final report of the evening, which is the work programme. This is yours, Nadia. Would you like to say anything?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So as per usual, the work programme is laid out before the committee. This is obviously the committee's opportunity to add any items to the work programme if they wish to. Other than that, obviously, it's just for the committee to review.
I think, Nadia, can you hear me? There'll be an extra meeting
Yes,
in November. November to consider the annual accounts.
Yes, Chair. So I did write out to advise the committee that the statement of accounts has been delayed and will not be needed to be submitted until the end of November. So yes, an additional meeting for the committee has been arranged to look at and to sign off the council statement of accounts. Yes.
There's a question from Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Chair. I've just on the work plan, the risk register COVID-19, it's just got to be scheduled on there. I just wonder why there was a reason why it was due to be scheduled and when it's likely to be scheduled and when we need to look at it.
Nadia, did you hear that?
Yes, I did, Chair. My understanding was that a review would be made available for the committee at a later date. At the last meeting, I don't think we did confirm on a date when the committee wanted to see the risk register. Adrian, I wonder if you've got any input into this in terms of when might be a good time for the committee to receive the report.
Sorry, could somebody remind me? I didn't quite hear what Councillor Taylor said.
It was just, Adrian, it was just that on the work programme, it's got the risk register for COVID-19 and it's just got to be scheduled by it. So I just wonder what the reason was that it had to be scheduled and when we're likely to need to see that.
To be honest, Chair, I'm not sure, because obviously you've seen that this evening as part of the risk management report, and while the pandemic is ongoing, that COVID risk register will come to you each quarter with the strategic risk register. So maybe Nadia, if we could update the work programme to reflect that may solve the issue.
Yes, Adrian, yeah, that's fine. That's something that we can do, not a problem.
If I may just clarify, because I believe I was the clerk for the meeting when that was recommended. It was something that came through at I think it was the June meeting, that you wish to see the COVID risk register because you didn't actually get to see it when we did the risk register update at that meeting. So as Adrian points out, it has actually been added as an appendix to item 11. So it does need to come off the work programme item. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Are there any further questions? Please raise your hand. No? Then I'll take a roll call of members. Councillor Bolton? Sorry, I should have said what the recommendation is. The recommendation is that we consider the items and do we wish to add anything or amend the work programme. I think the only thing that would be added in are the additional meeting for November, won't it, Nadia?
Yes, that's right, Mr. Angel. Otherwise, the work programme is just for noting really, and just for the committee to review, as mentioned earlier.
Right. I'll take the roll call then. Councillor Bolton?
Happy with the work programme, Chair.
And Councillor Bradshaw?
Thank you, Chair. Happy to note the work programme.
Councillor Charles?
Thanks, Chair. Happy to note.
Councillor Parsons?
Yes, happy to note.
Councillor Baldwin?
Happy to note, Chair.
And Councillor Taylor?
Happy to note, Chair.
I think that concludes the agenda for this evening. Can I just say a few words before we formally close? First of all, I'd like to thank Councillor Bolton for standing in for me while I was offline, and also to welcome the new members to the committee. And I hope you enjoy it and find it an interesting experience. With that, I'll say good night to everyone. I normally wish everyone a safe journey home, but I think it's just a matter of stepping downstairs or something like that. But anyway, just a reminder, I'll see you all in November.
Yeah, could I just add very briefly, this will be Nadia's last audit committee meeting, so the committee may join me in wishing her well in her future role at Leicester City Council.
Absolutely. Thank you, Nadia.
Definitely.
Yes, absolutely, Nadia.
Thank you, Nadia.
Thank you, Nadia, and I'd like to wish you all the best. Leicester City Council, is it?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Angel. Yeah, as Adrian said, I've been offered a new role over there. And so, yeah, I'll be leaving next Wednesday. But yes, I just want to say it's been a pleasure to work with everybody. And yeah, just best wishes. Thank you very much.
I'm just sorry, given the circumstances, we can't meet you in person to say goodbye. It seems a bit of a shame in these times.
Yes, it is indeed. I really would have liked that. But unfortunately, I will be making do with waving to everyone over Zoom.
Okay.
Nadia, you get to have 2 or 3 nights out with us, 5 at a time.
Yes, that's true, actually. I should make the most of it, shouldn't I?
Make the most of it.